Welcome to Intersectionality, How Identities Shape Our Experiences, a microlearning video from Screen Access Alberta. This video is part of a series to help you foster more inclusion on set for all types of screen productions. To learn more about Screen Access Alberta's commitment to diversifying Alberta's film and television industry workforce, visit our website at screenaccessalberta.ca/equity. The full complexity of our identities shapes how we see and experience the world. Like the characters and the stories we tell, where we come from, what we have seen, who we know, and what happens to us all inform who we are, how we react, and which choices are available to us as the plot of our lives plays out. This video will explain intersectionality and why it's important to consider when working toward a safe and inclusive working experience for your cast and crew. So, what is intersectionality? Well, intersectionality is a concept coined by the American legal scholar Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. The idea originated when she was supporting a group of Black women who were filing a discrimination claim against General Motors. The argument Dr. Crenshaw made, in brief, was that while the organization had done some work to support the advancement of women and had done some work to support the advancement of Black folks, the reality is that the unique combination of being both Black and a woman meant that neither of these efforts met the needs of Black women. This is intersectionality, considering all the identities someone holds and how they intersect to form a unique experience of the world. Put another way, intersectionality speaks to everyone's complex social identity. Think of identities like an incredibly complex Rubik's Cube. If you shift one side, everything else twists, often in ways we didn't expect or predict. This is intersectionality. It's not simply that we add Black and woman, but that Black plus woman creates something fundamentally new in which the challenges of being Black, the challenges of being a woman, and the challenges of being a Black woman are all distinct. For example, stats over time show that Black women are more likely than white women to experience poverty. They're also more likely to experience poverty than Black men. So, in the General Motors example, the efforts made by the company to support women and Black folks missed the unique identity of Black women, and they were being left behind. Now, this is true for all identities. They compound and transform the experience of our lives in ways that are far more complex than simple addition. Here's another example. How two white men experience the world will differ if one of them is highly educated and the other had less access to education, or if one of them is queer and able-bodied and another is straight but has a disability. The more identity factors and combinations of those factors you consider, age, race, ethnicity, class, body size, and more, the better you will be able to understand different people's experiences and account for them. Okay, let's take a few minutes to hear about intersectionality from Dr. Crenshaw herself. This video is about 4 minutes long.
Intersectionality came out of an encounter that I had with the way anti-discrimination law seemed to overlook the challenges that Black women were facing in employment. My first encounter with the problem went back to law school when we were advocating for affirmative action, advocating for the university to really take a hard look at their hiring practices in order to open them up. And one of the responses to that was to recruit, look for women and to look for people of color. I was fascinated by the fact that the women of color didn't really seem to be a group that the Women's Committee was considering, or the people of color, and it didn't even occur to them. I mean, that was the thing that was even more interesting. Like, why weren't you thinking about women of color? So then I started reading law cases, trying to find, well, how does the law actually handle what happens when Black women are, plaintiffs? And the logic was, if an employer does well by Black people, but it's just men, an employer does okay by women, but it's just white women, then Black women don't have anything to complain about, right? And to make matters worse, one court said that to allow Black women to put a race and gender discrimination claim together, to basically say, I'm discriminated against as a Black person who's a woman and as a woman who's a Black person, to allow her to do that would be to give her preferential treatment. She gets a chance to do something that neither Black men nor white women get a chance to do. So basically they were saying to give Black women what they need because only Black women need it is to give them preferential treatment. My view was the law was discriminating against Black women by not attending to their needs, not attending to some of the specific ways they experience discrimination. And quite frankly, some of the ways that their experience of discrimination could be representative of the wider group women or of the wider group African Americans. So I was really hard pressed to try to come up with a way of building off of what people understood discrimination to be and allowing them to see that there were other forms of discrimination that compounded that. So I'm a metaphorical thinker. I'd like draw pictures to try to capture ideas. And it seemed to me that one could bring courts and advocates into greater understanding of this problem if we use something that was really common. And an intersection seemed really common. If you thought about the workforce is structured by race and by gender, like who gets hired for what. That's kind of like the roads of an intersection. It's like the structure. And then the policies are more or less like the traffic that goes through those roads. Black women, because they were both women and Blacks, were located in two different structures that actually intersected with one another. And it made them vulnerable to both race and gender forms of exclusion. So intersectionality, I call it a word picture. It's a way of giving a snapshot or maybe even a video. This is the way it works, right? It's a dynamic idea. It's not a static idea.
When we think about different identities and how they affect a person's experience of the world, we should also think about their access to power and privilege. Another video in this microlearning series goes over power and privilege, and I highly recommend you visit screenaccessalberta.ca/equity to find it. But let's do a quick review of it here. Societal norms, stereotypes and biases, structures, and policies all factor into how easily people of different identities access power. Take language for an example. In Alberta, it is generally easier for someone who speaks English as their first language to access power than it is for someone who learned English later in life. People who don't speak or understand English in Alberta are the most likely to experience barriers to accessing power. Now, to be clear, this does not mean that all English speakers have power. It means they face fewer barriers to accessing power than those in Alberta who don't speak English. Or to put it another way, their language isn't a barrier to accessing power, whereas for others, it absolutely may be. The identities in the middle of the wheel are closer to accessing power, and the more identities a person has toward the inside of this wheel, so for example, they are English speaking, they are wealthy, they are slim, they are able-bodied, the more advantages they have compared with those identities toward the outside of the wheel, or the fewer barriers they're going to face. So people can have identities on different parts of the wheel. Some of a person's identities could reduce barriers to power, while others can increase them. This is how the complexity of intersectionality matters when thinking about inclusion. In any given context, say on a film set, how might different people with diverse identities be affected by the working conditions? And which steps can be taken to make the set safer and more inclusive for them? Okay, let's do a quick exercise together to get a sense of where you are when it comes to your own intersectional identities and what may be challenging for others. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil for this exercise. So feel free to pause the video now if you need some time to go grab them. Okay, draw a horizontal line across the middle of your page. I am going to read you a series of questions or statements, and at the end of each statement, I'm going to ask you to step forward or back. Just move your pen up the page about a line's worth if you're moving up, and move it down the page if you're moving back. There's 30 statements in total, so leave enough room to move your pen up and down the page multiple times. Ready? Let's get going. If you are right-handed, move your pen 1 mark above the center line. If English is your first language, move your mark higher. If one or both of your parents have a college degree, move your mark higher. If you can find Band-Aids at mainstream stores designed to blend in with or match your skin tone, move your mark higher. If your past schools and workplaces were filled with people you felt were like yourself, move your mark higher. If you're generally able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, move your mark higher. If you can generally walk alone at night without feeling unsafe, move your mark higher. If you studied the culture of your ancestors when you were in school, move your mark higher. If you were ever made fun of or bullied for something about yourself that you couldn't change or was beyond your control, move your mark back. If your family has ever left your homeland or entered another country not of your own free will, move your mark back. If you would never think twice about calling the police when trouble occurs, move your mark higher. If you were given opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities such as sports or music classes, move your mark higher. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, move your mark higher. If you have ever had to skip a meal or you have been hungry because there has not been enough money to buy food, move your mark back. If you feel your professional performance and expertise is generally valued, move your mark higher. If you have a visible physical disability, move your mark lower. If you have an invisible illness or disability, move your mark lower. If you were ever discouraged from an activity because of your race, class, ethnicity, gender, disability, sexual orientation, move your mark lower. If you've ever tried to change your appearance, mannerisms, or behavior to fit in more, move your mark lower. If you have ever been profiled by someone else using stereotypes, move your mark lower. If you feel good about how your identities are generally portrayed by the media, move your mark higher. If you were ever accepted for something you applied to, such as a school or a job, because of your association with a friend or a family member, move your mark higher. If you have ever been spoken over because you could not articulate your thoughts fast enough, move your mark lower. If someone has ever spoken for you when you did not want them to do so, move your mark lower. If there was ever substance abuse in your household, move your mark lower. If you come from a single parent household, move your mark lower. If you have ever been uncomfortable about a joke related to your race, religion, ethnicity, gender, disability, sexual orientation, but felt unsafe to confront the situation, move your mark lower. If you are never asked to speak on behalf of a group of people who share an identity with you, move your mark above the line. If you can make mistakes and people do not immediately attribute your behavior to flaws in your racial or gender group, move your mark higher. And if your parents told you that you could be anything you want to be, move your mark higher. All right, take a moment to look where your pen is on the page. How far up from the starting place? Or how far down? Which direction did you end up? I'm going to ask you now to take a little time to reflect on some of the following questions. First, I want you to imagine you're doing this in real life as a privilege walk. You are walking in a line next to someone, forward and back as each statement is announced. How would you feel when you moved ahead of the person next to you? What if you were left behind or had to move back when others move forward? How can you connect the previous concepts of intersectionality we were talking about to this activity? What do you think this says about the complexity of your own identity? Are there aspects of moving backward and forward during the exercise that were in your control to change? What's out of your control? And finally, what are some actions you could take in your workplace on set to address things like safety, opportunity, and inclusion? Now, to be sure, this exercise is not intended to make anyone feel guilt or shame. What it does is help us to better understand that we all have intersectional identities and we are all affected by power and privilege in complex ways. And it is always important to remember that within our own spheres of influence, we can make change to lead a safer and more equitable environment for ourselves and for others around us. To further reflect on lived experiences, social identities, and intersectionality, it is important to remember a few more things. One, identities are dynamic and can shift and change over time. We can be born into some identities, acquire them later in life, or encounter crises or boons in life that can alter our previous path without warning. This could be a job loss, a major injury or illness, or a lottery win or free education. Identities are also multiple and complex. Each person has many aspects of themselves, and as we've said, these work together in complex and unique ways. No two people's lived experience will be exactly the same, but there are some common experiences among certain identities. For example, the experiences of being Black, of being Indigenous, of living in situations of low income, etc. Identities are also determined by the social norms, the culture, and power in various locations and at various points of time. Identities of power in one culture may not be the identities of power in another, and vice versa. Still, there are commonalities in our global world. For example, cisgender or heterosexual men are going to have more social privilege and access to power in almost every part of the world. And then lastly, identities and their effect on our experiences are going to vary. Some identities will present greater benefits or greater challenges than others. For example, a mild invisible disability may prove less socially challenging than having a less controlled and managed mental health challenge, or than navigating a more obvious physical disability. And based on other factors in a person's identity or experience, how those challenges affect their lives will vary widely. Take time to understand that we experience the world differently, and knowing that there are differences should spark a sense of equity that is possible if we put commitment and resources behind it. All right, that's it for this microlearning. As you navigate toward building more dynamic, diverse, and inclusive productions, remembering the complexity of intersectional identities will help you design workplaces that are welcoming, more inclusive, and safer for the diversity of people working in the film and television industry, today and tomorrow. Now, thank you for taking time to learn more about intersectionality. For more information, microlearning videos, and resources to help build inclusive onset experiences, visit the Screen Access Alberta website at screenaccessalberta.ca/equity.